something trying to steal my mood. My crazy thoughts trying to kill my groove. That's when I hear a voice whisper through the noise that brings a bigger picture into view. Whenever the clouds come into my mind, I won't forget it's you who tells the sun to shine. Every worry, every night, every second thought about tomorrow's wasting time. You give the sparrows everything they need. You light the stars and you paint the leaves. You clothe the lilies with your majesty. And you don't even love them like you love me. No, you don't love them like you love me. No, like you love me, like you love me, like you love me, like you love me. Who am I in light of everything that you would choose to set your eyes on me? It blows my mind to think that you would know my name, and I'm adored by the King of Kings. Whenever the clouds come into my mind, I won't forget it's you who tells the sun to shine. Every worry, every night, every second thought about tomorrow's wasting time. Hey, you give the sparrows everything they need. You light the stars and you paint the leaves. You clothe the lilies with your majesty. And you don't even love them like you love me. No, you don't love them like you love me. No, like you love me, like you love me, like you love me, like you love me. Break it down one time. Break it down 2 times. Hey, listen up. Why should I worry? Why should I care? 'Cause nobody loves me, no, like you love. Why should I worry? No, why should I care? Every second thought about tomorrow's wasting time. You give the sparrows everything they need. You light the stars and you paint the lilies with your majesty. And you don't even love them like you love me. No, you don't love them like you love me. No, like you love me. Nobody loves me like you love me. 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 Nobody hold me in midnight hour like you love me. Nobody loves me like you love me, Lord.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. All attempts of praise and treasures of faith are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing. Nothing is better than
Good morning, Christ Church. My name is Tommy Blackshear. If you all would please stand with us this morning and worship with us.
Every chain will break as broken hearts declare His praise. For who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power, fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before Him. Open up the gates, make way before the King of Kings. God who comes to save is here to set the captives free. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power, fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains. Every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before Him. Stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Oh, who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty?
There is no one
Who can stop the Lord Almighty? No. Who can stop the Lord? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power, fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before Him. Searched the world, and it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise, treasures that fade, never enough.
good morning, everybody. So glad you guys are here today. My name's John. I'm one of the pastors here at Christ Church. If you're joining us online, hey, who told you to sit down? That's fine. You can sit down if you want to. If you're joining us online, your online host is connecting with you right now. I was going to tell you, if you're in the room, to say hey to somebody, like give them a head nod or a fist bump. I prefer to go to the bow now if you don't want to touch anybody. But hey, maybe just wave to somebody who's across the room and say hey. Hey, a couple things real quickly. One, I want to make sure that if you're our guest, that you're getting connected. And so if you didn't get the opportunity to maybe meet somebody out front at one of the welcome areas by the door, then you can do that on your way out, just to maybe meet a real live person. If you want to do it electronically, there's a number of ways that you can connect. If it's your first time or your second time, you can just do that by text, and then we'll opt you into a communication channel and help you figure out how to get connected around here. I'm going to skip all announcements today. You got a program that has a few things on it. I want to go to generosity because we do that every weekend here. And, you know, back in, March. Are we on 8 months now since of all this mess? Okay. Back in the beginning of March, like March the 8th, I think, was the last time that we all were meeting pre-COVID. We were offering bags. And those of you who are regular around here, you would know that. So it would come by you, and we would give you different options on things to do. We're not doing any of that anymore. And so we've moved all of you who are regulars over to online, or some of you are still using the mail, or there's a box on the back of the wall back there. But all that's generosity, and we would have this moment here where we would explain all that to you. I thought this morning I would just tell you about me personally, how much I give. No, I'm not going to tell you that. I thought I would tell you why my wife and I choose to practice generosity, and I can do it real quickly. We both grew up in church our whole lives, and we taught this from a very early age. My mom would give me money when I went into Sunday school on Sunday morning, and she would say, put this in the offering. She didn't teach me how to be generous. She taught me how to give money. So when I grew up, and we got married, and we said, oh, this is the decision we're going to choose to make. Every 2 weeks when I get paid, we've got choices to make, right? And we're going to do this with part of it, and we're going to do that with part of it, and we are going to choose to be generous. And it's just something we've done for the last 28 years that we've been married. And we do that for a number of reasons. One, because we are trying to recognize that God's been generous to us. And we've all come from a lot of different paths in our life. We have a lot of different experiences. Whether we ever choose to realize it and name it or not, God's been generous to you. And so we recognize that, and we can just list a number of ways that He has proven that to us over time. And so we give as a thank you, essentially. God, thank you that you've been so generous to us. Help us to model that. And so we try to practice generosity to say thank you. And we do that in a local church. We do that in a real local church, an assembly of people who are called, right, to represent Jesus in their community. We don't give it to another organization. That's additional, right? We give our first giving to the church because I think that's what the Bible teaches. You could read it in the Old Testament. It might be the Lord's house or something like that. The New Testament, we talk about giving to a group of people, right? An assembly, a church. So we give to a group of people, and specifically we choose to give here. And let me go back to March the 8th because pre-COVID, man, I just thought, man, there is nothing better happening in the world than what's happening at Christ Church. I would tell my friends all over the country, man, you would be so lucky to come here and work with me. It's amazing what's happening. And now we go through all this last 8 months, and I get up this morning, I'm thinking about all this, and I go, man, there's nothing better still happening in the world than what's happening at Christ Church. It's different, right? Numbers are different. That's true everywhere you look. But let me tell you, if you've been with us for the last few weeks and we're talking about the Lord's Prayer, and again, some of this is just kind of like you're going to go with that touchy-feely stuff, but it just feels like God is doing something new among us. And I go, man, I want in on that. I want to see that happen more and more. I want to see that happen for our kids. I want to see that happen for our teenagers. I want us to be in position to meet needs in our community. We choose to give here. And I'm excited about that. I just wanted to tell you, I'm excited about what's happening here and what God's allowing us to be a part of. And so there's a number of ways you can jump in on that if you want to choose to. I would encourage you to download the church app, and there's instructions for all that. I just want to pray over all that and just ask God to bless this time today. God, today we say thank you for the many things that you are doing in our life. God, help us to recognize the blessings that you're pouring out for us. God, help us to recognize the good that you have done to us and you've given to us. God, today we are choosing to be generous. God, I ask you to honor that for each person in this room today who chooses to do that. That we would do it joyfully, God. We would do it with a heart of gratitude. And God, that you would take the gifts today and do amazing things with them. God, the hearts in our community would change because of what's happening here today. So God, we believe that. God, we're going to ask you to do amazing things for those who give today, and we're going to thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen. So again, if you're our guest today, let me just kind of bring you up to speed. We've been hanging out in one particular teaching of Jesus for the last few weeks. Today's actually our 4th week. We got 2 more after this, what we know as the Lord's Prayer. And you can find it in your Bible in the book of Matthew and chapter 6. So there's 4 people who write about the life of Jesus, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So Matthew tells us Jesus' most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and right in the middle of it, we get this prayer. So that's kind of the setup for today. And I thought maybe I would just start off with a little bit of a story this morning, and I want to be really, really clear as I tell you this story, okay, that I really hesitate in telling this because I really don't want to come across as like the hero, and I don't want to come across as being better than I really am. So can we just understand that at the beginning? I'm going to tell you a personal story, and it's not because I want to be the hero of the story. Can we just agree that that's true? All right? You're not better than you are. And if my wife was here, we could bring her out here, and she could say, listen, he's really not that good. But I think it communicates an excellent starting point for where we've been the last few weeks and where we need to go today. So about 4 weeks ago, I get a text from my oldest daughter, which says, Dad, how often do you need new tires? She said, I'm getting an oil change, and they're telling me I need new tires. And I said, well, they tell you that all the time. Sorry to any of y'all who work in the mechanic business. I said, they're always going to tell you need to do more. I said, but you know, how much have you driven this car? She hasn't had it that long. She says, well, I've driven 30,000 miles in the last year and a half. And I thought, okay, well, you need to make sure, is there somebody you can talk to? Just make sure that that's exactly what you need, okay? And so she verifies for me that that is exactly indeed what she needs. You know, she needs new tires. And so about 2 weeks later, I text her back. I hadn't heard anything about this. And I say, hey, I didn't hear anything. Did you get the new tires yet? And, you know, bubbles are forming right there. And she says, hey, I don't have the money yet. And then, spoken like a true 24-year-old, she says, I'm hoping for another stimulus. And sometimes, right, as a dad, you just know. Sometimes as a dad, you just know. And so I text back, hey, what if I hit you with the dad stimulus? What if we hit you with the dad stimulus and you know, and so she's like, that would be awesome, with full-on crying emojis, okay? Full-on, like, tears going down, you know, the whole thing. And I said, get the tires that you need before it's too late. Let me know how much it's going to cost, and then, you know, we'll send you the money. And she came back with an offer to try to pay me back, right, in a couple of weeks. And, of course, you know what I said. Yeah, it's a dad stimulus. There's also a dad tax, so there'll be a little extra required when you pay me back. No, I didn't say that. I said, I don't want to be paid back. And I can't help but think about what Jesus says just a little bit after the Lord's Prayer in his sermon when he says, chapter 7, verse 11, if you, who are really not that good of a person as a dad, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more would our Heavenly Father give good things to those who ask him? And I need us to have that picture of God in our mind today as we come to this text because, yes, he is the Almighty. Yes, he's the Creator. Yes, he's the Holy One. He's entirely different than you and I are. And yet he wants us to call him Father. And so just like one of my kids right now, right, has this confidence in her father. Listen, there is a confidence in your dad at times that relieves you of anxiety. Are you with me? Where you don't have to worry about that anymore because the dad is there and he's going to take care of it, right? And he's going to give you something good. And the whole first half of the prayer that we've been talking about goes like this, right? My father knows me. My father loves me. And by the way, he's the creator of the universe, okay? He's the Almighty. And then we come right here to verse 11 where we're going to be today. Give us today, like with all that stuff in place, give us today our daily bread. I mean, the whole thing looks like this, right? This is Matthew chapter 6, verse 9. You should pray like this. I'm not even going to ask you guys to read it with me this week. Take the week off, all right? Our Father in heaven, your name be honored as holy. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. And forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. That's next week. That's going to be record attendance right there. And do not bring us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. So today, we're going to hang out right here. Give us today our daily bread. I mean, can we just have a show of hands on this one? Like, who are my bread people? Come on, we're the bread people. All right, awesome. Most of us are bread people. I love bread in all of its forms. Anybody else? I think however you got it, let's have it. Except, I was thinking about this, except perhaps friendship bread. Is anybody else with me? Like there's just something I can't quite mentally wrap my head around on friendship bread. It's the chain letter of baking, essentially, is what it is, all right? I just don't understand the friendship bread thing. But give us today our daily bread literally translates this way, give us today's bread. Let's think about it that way. God, give us today's bread. And everyone listening to Jesus would have a few things that they would be thinking about immediately as he says this. Number one, bread is a staple in the diet of everybody in the first century. I mean, you think we like bread here? Like it was there every day, every meal still is. It's just a staple in the diet. The other thing they would be thinking about is it would be a serious thing. Like when he says that, they would look at each other and go, oh yeah, I'm worried about that too. Aren't you worried about that? Because you got people in the first century who are working, getting paid by the day. And whatever we get paid today is what we have to spend for tomorrow. And you're not getting sick days, you're not getting vacation days, so that would be a legitimate concern for people where they actually go, oh, I don't know where the next meal's coming from. And it would be a symbol, and this is where I want to go for a few minutes today. It would be a symbol, right? Today's bread would be a symbol to everybody listening, and it's a symbol for God's provision. All right, God's provision. And I want us to step back into the Old Testament and Hebrew history a little bit for a few minutes this morning. I want to go back to the book of Exodus, where the Hebrew people have been in slavery to the Egyptians for 400 years. And God used a man by the name of Moses, right? We mostly probably all know about Moses, and he's going to lead the people, and there's this miraculous escape, right, where they're heading to the Red Sea and the water parts and all the people cross, and then when they're across, the water comes back in and it closes in and takes out Pharaoh's army. And so when you come to Exodus chapter 16, all these people are now on the other side of that, and they're in the wilderness. They're essentially in the desert where they're going to walk around in a circle for the next 40 years, okay? And God's going to teach them some lessons about themselves and about himself. And they're on the way towards this land that God has promised them. Hey, there's something better out there. We're going towards it. So we're going to learn a few things while we're out here. And one of the things that quickly happens for the people now that they're in their new freedom is they want to go back to the way things used to be. And specifically, their complaint is, okay, yeah, I get it. We used to be slaves, and that was really, really terrible, but do y'all remember how great the food was? That's their complaint, okay? So God comes to Moses, and he says, right here with a plan, right? Here's the plan, and you read this in Exodus chapter 16:4. Here's what we're going to do about that complaint. The Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. Would you just read those last two words with me? The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. Now, I don't think bread right here is a metaphor for anything at all. I think that's really the plan, right? By which God wants to teach people dependence on him. Here's the instruction. I'm going to take care of you. This is going to be one of the ways in which I choose to prove that. I'm going to bring bread every single day, and I'm going to bring enough just for today. And before you start feeling too bad for them, right, God's going to throw in something else into the mix that we don't always hear about. If you've ever heard this story before, right, about the bread from heaven, that verse 13 says there's an evening meal also. Here's the way it reads. That evening, quail came and covered the camp. So we've got a little bit of variety there, right? We got some protein in there. And then in the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. And when the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost. What does that make anybody else think about? Frosted flakes, okay. The ground, it appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. So this is the amazing part, right? Wake up in the morning, you peel back the tent opening, right? You crawl out of your tent, you look out there and you go, oh, wow, what is this stuff? It's all over the ground, right? You wake up early in the morning to go to the bathroom, and you head outside the camp. You're like, wow, what is this stuff? It's all over the ground right here, this flaky stuff. There it is. And I don't know how this actually went down, but one person goes, hey, why don't you try it? And then another person goes, I'm not going to try it. Why don't you try it? And he goes, I'm not going to eat it. You eat it. I would never do that. And then some middle school kid came along, and he goes, I'll eat it, right? And then he was fine, and then everybody else goes, okay, well, I'll try it, and that's not too bad, and I'll try it, and that's not too bad. And then some dude goes, what is it? Like, what is it, right? I mean, you didn't forget already, did you? But it's just so basic. Listen, it's as if they are saying, is this it? I mean, is this it? Is this what you said you were going to do? In verse 15, Moses said to them, it's the bread. We got to go over this again. It's the bread the Lord has given you to eat. Now, we know this as manna, right? Manna means exactly that. What is it? That's what the word manna means. What is it? Or is this it? That's what it means. It's really, they're saying this in the form of a complaint, okay? So, but have you ever really prayed for something before? Right? You prayed for it, right? And God answered the prayer, and your response was, really? Like, really? Is this it? Like, you know, I mean, you got the thing that you prayed for, God provided, and then you responded with, okay, what is this? I've shared briefly with you guys from time to time that we have had terrible luck in our lives, myself and my wife, with vehicles. And we've never messed with a car payment for that very reason, right? I mean, I've never had a car long enough to justify having something really nice. I just know it. I'm going to the end that way. I've totaled 3 of my parents' vehicles. Each of my 3 kids totaled one of our vehicles. So we always just kind of roll the dice with things and go, does it go from A to B? Most of the time, and that's how we do it. And so we had found ourselves several years ago in this place where we were down a second vehicle. And I wasn't exactly sure what we should do about it. So we're praying over this whole thing. And then sure enough, like not long after we started praying about it, a friend says, hey, I've got this car I'd like to get rid of. Would you guys like it? We'll just give it to you. And so we go sign over, you know, all the papers and do all that stuff. And it wasn't top of the line by any means. The reason he gave it to us was because he got something better. We understand that, right? And he got something nicer and newer and more reliable, and he passed it off to us. And my wife has reminded me recently, she was driving this car. She had gone to the school to pick up our kids and then also to pick up one of the kids' friends. And so this is an old Toyota Corolla, okay, mid-90s. Not a lot of bells and whistles. Not everything on this thing worked. The driver's side door was painted differently than the rest of the vehicle. Can you picture this thing right here? And had crank windows to roll the windows down. And this kid from the back seat in the course of the ride says to my wife, well, this is a crappy car. And listen, there were times when I really felt what that kid was saying. And she should have kicked him out of the car, right? You understand that. Get out and walk if it's that bad. But, I mean, it's like, God, I know God is looking down at all of that from time to time and going, okay, hello, did I not meet the need? And how crazy is it that we do this thing that these people are doing and go, God, you're on point every single day. But come on, what is this? And we ask, and God provides, is this it, really? And then an interesting thing happens in verse 19. Moses said to them, okay, no one's to keep any of it until morning. Remember, this is what? Today's bread. However, some of them did the thing that most of us do. They paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning. And then a bad thing happened. It was full of maggots, and it began to smell. So from what I can only conclude just by reading the story is that anxiety and concern, right? People started thinking, okay, we got today covered. That was pretty cool, but what about tomorrow? And they became, and this may not be the right use of the word, I understand that, they became what I would call the first hoarders that we've ever known. And years ago, I took our son when he was in middle school on essentially a service work trip with some other middle school boys and their dads. And we went to Eastern Tennessee, and one of our assignments is to go to a lady's house who lived alone, very, very poor neighborhood. And this was my first experience. We're going to go help this lady who is a hoarder clean out her house, all right? She didn't want us to be there, just so you know that. We're not talking about messy, that's different. We're not talking about clutter, that's different. We're not talking about being disorganized, that's entirely different. We're talking about unusable spaces. Are you with me? Hundreds of empty 2-liter bottles just all over the kitchen, stacks and stacks of newspapers, clothes piled high, a very, very small walkway to navigate through the entire house, okay? And then there's the garage. That was entirely different. Thousands of things that she had bought and stored in the garage, right? The same kind of thing after the same kind of thing. And I understand, and so just hear me out, I understand there's some psychology behind this, okay? That people have lost certain things and we're holding on. I understand that it's a very layered kind of a thing. We have difficulty with parting things, a lot of us. There's a certain loss that drives us. I understand there's difficulty with just making decisions, okay? In her case, listen, as we got to know her, it was high anxiety and it was fear of not having enough. And after a full day of helping this lady, she was exhausted, she was agitated. She allowed us to carry half of her garage out to the curb for the trash. We took dozens and dozens of trash bags out to the curb. And when we left, no sooner had we left, we're driving down the road and we can see in the rearview mirror, this lady is out at the curb dragging all the stuff back to the house again. And there's something, don't miss it, you go, well, I'm not that lady, don't miss this. There's something that makes us feel safer when we're surrounded by excess, even when it's unusable. If it fills a perceived need, right? It's not just for people on TV shows or with psychological issues, it's for all of us. And so they wake up one day and there's the manna. Picture this, right? Wow, that's great. Delivery came right to the tent, right there to the front door. And somebody from the very beginning decided they might not get that again tomorrow. What about tomorrow, right? What about the next day? What about next week? Oh, we got it today. Yeah, sure, that's an amazing thing right there. And the question we all have is, well, what if God doesn't come through again today? Which seems to be the reason for the one rule when it comes to daily bread. It's only good for today. Why? Because God's teaching us to have a dependence on him for everything that we need. And then you get to verse 35, and the Israelites ate manna 40 years. And I don't know how many times God had to come through for them before somebody eventually started to believe him, right? Listen, there's a distinction, and I really hope you catch it. 40 years of daily bread, not 40 years worth of bread. That's different. I mean, not 480 months of bread, not 2,085 weeks of bread, not 14,600 days worth of bread, but bread every single day repeated over the course of 40 years. Now, how many of us would love to have that meal plan figured out? That for 40 years, not one single person asked the question, what's for dinner? Because we already know, we got it figured out. But it's building trust for 40 years, God providing literally today's bread. So when Jesus says, pray this way, give us today our daily bread, let me propose 2 takeaways for us today, all right? Here's the first one. Ask for what you need. All right, ask for what you need. And I picture God up there going, look, if I can bring bread to the front door every day for 40 years, surely I can do the thing that you're asking for. So you ask him. And you might say, well, how do I know if the thing that I'm asking for is something I really need or something I want or maybe it's actually agreed? Well, I think you're smart enough to know the difference between a need and agreed. But I would just say this, ask for what you think you need. And the principle is this, if it matters to you, then it matters to God. All right? If it matters to you, then it matters to God, and he can decide. This is where I've landed on the whole thing over the years. Look, ask for whatever it is that you need and trust that God, remember on the first half of the prayer, trust that God is smart enough and wise enough and big enough to actually be able to filter all that out and figure out what it is that you really need. He's a father, right, who loves you, who wants to give good things to his children. Don't forget, he's holy, he's righteous, and he's majestic, and he has this eternal perspective on things, and he has a will, we covered that he wants to see done in the world. And so I need to ask for what I need and let God decide. I think he's smart enough to figure it all out. So, ask for what you need. Bread, by the way, isn't necessarily very spiritual, is it? It doesn't mean that your request has to be super spiritual. It's bread, right? So I was just kind of doing a quick run through the Bible to see different things that people had prayed about throughout the scriptures, just to give you an idea. Elijah prayed that it wouldn't rain. Solomon prayed for wisdom in his new job. Naomi prayed for her daughter-in-law would find a new husband. Several people prayed that they could have kids, right? Specifically, they prayed for a son. Gideon thought God might be asking him to do something, and he wasn't really sure about it, so he prayed for confirmation. Peter prayed, literally, for financial help to pay his taxes. A couple of dads prayed for their little girls to actually get better. And there are many of you, listen, there are many of you that I've been able to pray with. And it's not about my prayers. But I stood down here 2 weeks ago with a woman I've never met before who came with a very specific prayer request. And before I said, you know what, I'll pray about that, she goes, oh no, you're going to pray about it right now. Okay, I got you. We'll pray about it right now. And I just put my hand on the back of her neck and I prayed this prayer. And at the end of it, she goes, did you feel that? I said, no, I didn't feel anything. She goes, I felt it. Something happened. Something just happened right there. I remember praying for a guy who had back problems like crazy. I laid my hand on his back. It's not about me, the prayer. Listen, you can interpret all this stuff you want to. I laid my hand on his back and I just prayed for his healing. He goes, did you feel that? No, I didn't. I'm not injured. I didn't feel anything. He goes, man, my back, I feel it. We prayed for some of you who are part of our church that you would go to the doctor in a couple of days, and that whatever he said was there wouldn't be there anymore. And you know what? You went to the doctor, and he goes, I don't know what happened. It's not there. And you did the simple principle that we're talking about. You said, God, I need something today. I need something today, and God did that. And I think you ask for whatever it is that you think you need and trust that God is smart enough to figure it all out. You're not boxing him in a corner. You're not saying, God, because I prayed it, you have to do it. Oh, you've already put yourself in that place, right, in the front part of the prayer where you go, God, you got a will. You have something you want to happen. Whatever you want to happen, I'm going to align myself to accept what you're going to do. But here's what I want to happen. And I think you just go in and you say, God, it's a job, it's my kids, it's a decision, it's finances. God, it's a miracle to heal this thing. And I think we just go in and say, God, I need, and you fill in the blank, and I need it today. And yeah, of course, your will be done. We got that, and we're good with that. We've accepted that. But God, here's what I need today. Some of you found yourself in here today because you go, you know what? I don't know what else to do. I'm going to go there because I need something. And so that's number one. You ask for what you need. And here in a couple of minutes, you're going to feel like I completely pulled a 180 on you, but just see if you can hold these two thoughts together, because number two is realize what you have. Because if you've been with us for the last couple of weeks, I have been saying for the last 3 weeks, hey, just hang on, right? We're going to get to week 4, and then you can pull out your list. We're going to get to week 4, and then you can just ask everything that you have written down, and you're keeping in a note on your phone, and you can ask all the stuff that you want to ask God about. Hang on, week 4, we're going to get there, right? And I really thought, leading up to this point, that might actually be the landing spot for this particular message, until I started hanging out with Jesus the last couple of days in John chapter 6. And in John chapter 6, you read some fascinating stories about Jesus. Some of his most famous miracles happen in a really short window right there. You have Jesus feeding 5,000 or thousands of people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 little fish. It says that there was so much, everybody ate as much as they wanted, and there were just baskets of leftovers. Jesus leaves that miracle, right? Sends his disciples in a boat to cross the water, stays behind, comes out to them in the middle of the night walking on the water. There's a famous miracle that everybody talks about. Says, hey, don't be afraid, it's me. Ends up on the other side of the water with his disciples, and all the people who loved what the miracle Jesus did with the bread have gone around to the other side to see if we can find Jesus again, and they're going, oh, how'd that happen? Because when we left you, you weren't with them, but now you're with them. This guy's amazing. And they go to the other side of the shore, right? And there's a conversation that takes place between Jesus, his disciples, and this group of people. This is John chapter 6. So they asked him, what sign, what miracle will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do, Jesus? Our ancestors, okay, we're going to reference this, ate manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat, right? Hey, Jesus, by the way, those were some amazing tricks that you did back there. That was awesome. Here's the question, what are you going to do for us today? What do you got up your sleeve today, Jesus? We want to see that. By the way, let me just throw this in for free. When you actually start to read the Gospels, you'll see that Jesus did relatively few miracles, a lot less than I used to think he actually did. And one of the reasons I think that Jesus didn't do more is this kind of exchange that we're reading about right here. Is that sometimes a miracle produced faith in people, but more often than not, it didn't. Right? They sometimes just produced a desire in people to see more miracles. Okay, you did that. That was amazing. We had bread yesterday. Clearly, you went from there to there. I don't know how you covered that gap, but today we need something new. Jesus, what do you have for it? What else can you do? And Jesus has to be going, wow, that's incredible. You followed me for food. Unbelievable. And then Jesus says to them, okay, truly, let me tell you the truth here. It's not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven. It is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. There's got to be some people standing around going, okay, he's doing that one thing again, guys, where you don't really know what he's talking about. It probably means something else, so maybe we should ask a follow-up question, but like the man said, give us that bread, right? We want real bread. We want real miracles. Sir, they said, always give us this bread. In other words, wow, it's great having Jesus, isn't it? Because whatever we want, Jesus can do it. Guys, let's stick with Jesus. He's got more tricks. And then Jesus declared this, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. This is Jesus' way of saying, okay, everyone, just hold up for a second. Do you not really understand what I'm saying right now? That thing that happened way back there with your ancestors in Exodus is happening right now here in front of you in real time. The way God rained all that bread down from heaven back there thousands of years ago, right, from heaven to earth, oh, he brought it every single day. Didn't miss, didn't disappoint. Listen, he's now doing one better. I am that bread. I am a bread that brings life, right? And if you were to come to me, look at those words, right? If you were to follow me, to trust me, to get on board with me, you would never go hungry. In other words, right, today, right now, today, you could have bread. And tomorrow we'll start the thing all over again, but I promise, guess what? Tomorrow you're going to have bread again, and the day after that, and the day after that. But it's one day at a time. Here's the prayer, right? Give us this day our daily bread, or give us today's bread. And here's Jesus going, hello, over here. Over here. Grand conclusion, Jesus is the daily bread. I hope you're not disappointed in that. Jesus is the daily bread. Listen, the presence of God in your life. I mean, the manna was great. I get it. Every morning, great. It's all amazing. Walk out there. There it is. What is it? Do you want to go back to that, right? Or do you want to understand, I am the bread of life. I came out of heaven. I'm offering myself to you. And sometimes the prayer is this, God, I need a miracle in my life. Okay, but listen, what Jesus said, this is the miracle. I get it. Pray for it. But maybe the real miracle is Jesus offering himself to you as bread of life. And when you take him in, you never go hungry. In other words, you never go without. See, in the same way, right, that the bread back there provided what people needed that day, Jesus going, I'm here to provide, right, in your life what you need today. And oh, by the way, it's probably different than what you think. So I don't know if it's registering with you right now. I don't know if you're catching on right now. I don't know if I can explain it any better to you than this. More than you need bread for your life, you need the bread of life. Hey, more than you need the miracle in your life, you need the miracle worker in your life. And I think you ought to ask for whatever it is that you need. And while you're asking for what you think you need, realize that you have already at your disposal more than you could ever imagine. So ask him, right? He might do it. If he doesn't do it, right, or he does it differently than you think, you go, man, I asked you, God, we begged you, we all prayed for it. God, it didn't happen like I thought you would do it. But God, you've been more real to me in this moment than ever before. See, that happens. That happens for people. This is what I want. This is what I need. You didn't do it, but God, I can't explain it. You're more real and present in my life than ever before. Listen, if God gave us everything on the list, God, if you did it all, like if you answered everything I have written down right here, and somehow we missed the miracle of your presence in our life, what a colossal failure that would be. Today's bread. And if it's only you, Jesus, let that be enough. We declare our dependence on you today for what we need. You are today's bread. And Jesus becomes the answer to our prayer in a really strange way. You know, Jesus used this whole bread idea when he instituted the Lord's Supper or communion. Took an everyday common symbol and he said, look, why don't you use this to remember me? Those of you who are followers of Jesus, you know that we do this every week. You can find that in the back of the seat in front of you. There's a little wafer of bread. It's probably not really bread, but it's something there that reminds you of the presence of Jesus, right? He said, this represents my body. You'll find the juice. He said, this represents my blood. You might choose to take that in this moment, but I'm going to do what we've been doing the last few weeks. And we've been giving a very specific, directed, guided prayer time over the thing that we're talking about. And so I don't know if it would If you want to stand for this, you're welcome to do that. If you want to stay seated where you are, if you want to kneel, but we're going to do exactly what we've just talked about today. We're going to ask God for what we need. And we're going to declare our dependence on Him for what He's already provided us with, His presence. I know you walked in here today with a list. I know you walked in here today with something that you really need God to do for you. And I think you ought to ask Him to do it. I think you ought to ask Him to do it. And you know, I've been praying this week that some of you would actually take a risk and actually put it all on the line and say, God, I'm going to give you one chance. And if you do this thing, then I'll believe. If you don't do it, I don't know. Maybe we're done. We're going to break up. I've been praying that God would do that thing you've asked for, just to show you how powerful He is. And yet maybe something would even change in your mind and your attitude and your heart this morning in that prayer, and you would go, okay, God, that was my wager. It didn't happen, but I felt you in that moment. And so we're going to pray for what we need today. If you guys would join me. You can stand, you can sit, you can kneel. But we're going to ask God for what we need. God, every week we come to you. You're teaching me so much through this prayer. God, we're going to come to you the way that you've outlined that we should come to you. God, you are our Father. And you're in heaven. And your name is above all other names. God, we just declare that you're holy. God, you're pure. You're majestic. God, you're glorious. God, you're entirely different. You're other. God, you have eternal perspective. God, you have wisdom. God, we know that we stand here on earth and you're in heaven. We're going to keep our words few. But God, I know some of us walked in here today and we have real needs. God, would you grow my faith today to believe that you can meet those needs? God, you don't need defended. You don't need explained. But God, I'm asking today that you come through for people in this room, people who are watching online, who are coming to you today, God, saying, man, we need it. We need it today. God, I don't even claim to know what those things might be. But collectively, all across this room, all across our community, we're offering up these prayers right now. God, we know you have a will. We know that you have things you want to accomplish and things you want to do. God, we want to trust that you see things we don't see. But right now, God, we have things that we need. God, we're going to come to you boldly like a child who doesn't know any better. And God, some of us are praying for what we would call a miracle today. God, I believe you can do that. God, I believe you can meet that need. And God, I would pray in this moment that if you choose to do it differently than we're asking, God, if you choose to do something entirely different than what we have in mind, God, if you choose to do something better, or God, you choose not to do it at all, God, would you give us that extra sense of your presence today to realize that your life available to us today is a miracle in itself? God, that you offer yourself today. God, you offer enough of yourself today. God, you offer to us this bread of life. God, I would ask today very specifically that when you meet a need today for someone who's praying for it, it would be the catalyst for them to come to embrace you as the bread of life. So God, today we give you our needs. God, we realize what we have. And we just want to say thank you. We just say thank you. And we pray through Jesus. Amen.
Here Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Let's sing it again. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. In the light of his glory and grace.
Yeah. Hey, so glad you guys were here today. I hope that you felt God's presence in the service today, whether you're in the room or online. You can, if you're online and you want to pray with somebody, our host would love to do that with you. If you're in the room and you would like to continue and you have a need you want to pray with somebody about, you can head back to that corner back there. Someone would love to pray with you today. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. We'll see you next week.
Whatever comes next, no, I won't be afraid. You stand beside me when so